Hello again, everyone, and welcome back to Reddit Aliens. I'm John, and as always, thank you so much for being here. Good topic, some cautionary tales. Let's do it. Redditors who have killed a person in self-defense. How are you doing now? Please remember to like, share, and subscribe. I didn't, but my dad killed a home invader in our living room. I remember him being slightly bothered about it until the father of the guy he killed told him he would have done the same to protect his family. It was really never talked about again. We did sell that house about 2 months later, though. I'd come home late from work one night. I had to run a store 5 hours away for a week. My wife and oldest son were already asleep. I started to walk on my back porch and thought I heard my driveway gate but couldn't see anything. Walked in and greeted the dogs and my youngest son, who was playing Xbox. I set my bags down and headed back to the porch to lock up the work truck and noticed 3 guys walking up my driveway with their faces covered. I ran back, grabbed the youngest, and literally opened my bedroom door, tossed him in, and yelled for my wife to call the cops. I grabbed a pistol and proceeded toward our kitchen, and before I could round the corner, the dogs were barking and the rear door from the porch to the kitchen opened. I heard the one guy yell, "Shoot the effing dog," and heard a pop. I made the turn and emptied 20 rounds out. I hit all 3 of them, killing 2. Last one seen me round the corner and said he started to run back off the porch, but I hit him twice before he made the door. My oldest son came down, and I made him go into the room with my wife and youngest son. I went back and checked the guys and realized immediately that one was definitely deceased. He seemed to be in my line of fire for most of the rounds. The other that ended up deceased was slumped over, still breathing. The third was on my back steps, panicking, saying he was sorry. When I went back in to put my pistol on the counter, I realized my shepherd was hit but alive. After police and EMS showed up, I had my wife find a vet that was 24/7. I unfortunately was stuck dealing with police for about 5 hours, but the wife and kids took the shepherd to the vet, and he was okay aside from occasional seizures till this day. Ultimately, the week after, I was on edge because I didn't know why they tried to do it, but then again I felt justified because I protected my family. We did eventually find out it wasn't entirely random, and they were waiting on me to get home to try to rob us for money we didn't have. I still remember when I saw the first guy laying there on the floor, clearly deceased, and the guy on the back porch literally crying that he was sorry. I'm an advocate for learning from your mistakes. I didn't want to take a life, let alone 2, but I knew once I heard them shoot the dog, it was kill or be killed. I've spoken with the surviving intruder since on the phone, and he apologized to and through for everything. He was 19 when it happened and was charged with 2 counts of manslaughter, dropped from second-degree murder and aggravated robbery. In 6 years, he has an opportunity of parole, and I plan to provide a statement to the board suggesting he be allowed release. I say this because he went above and beyond to contact me when he was facing life without parole to just say sorry, and sobbed for 30 minutes, and even with him figuring he'd only be getting life if not death. I made sure my kids and wife didn't see them. I also cleaned for 2 days and had to file true homeowner's insurance for my sliding door and a bunch of repairs and subfloor replacement, which honestly is a hassle. Regardless, it's still a thing that is on the back of my mind and will be for a while. My family is safe, and that's what matters to me the most. I don't have PTSD, but I can occasionally be over-observant since this happened. Also, won't let my kids stay in the living room to play games or anything after 9. They have to be upstairs in the bedroom by then. Needless to say, it wasn't easy. I'd have rather to have not killed anyone. I'd rather they had the opportunity to have learned from it instead of their families having to learn from it. The one guy had a daughter around my youngest son's age. That is honestly what bothered me the most when everything was being figured out. But anyway, I could ramble on, but just know your mental state and understanding is what decides how you come out of this. It's not easy, and don't expect it to be, but remember, if the options are few, the risks are high, and ultimately, if it comes time to defend, do it with prejudice and intent to protect. Preserve life as much as you can, of course, because the dead don't learn from their mistakes, but don't let preservation become a mistake that in turn takes you. One of my friends was attacked in her home. She stabbed the guy repeatedly until he just stopped moving. Now she has windows that are nailed shut and 4 locks on her door. She's skittish in public, but if you go to her house, she's obviously terrified always. Any noise is a vitriolic reaction from her, and she refuses to ever open curtains or anything to let light in. It's really sad to see her like this, actually, because she used to be the host with the most. Now she hates being at home. I was working in a bar in 2014 when 5 men jumped over the counter and started beating me and another member of the staff in an attempt to get away with the registers. 4 ran away empty-handed, while another laid motionless on the ground. It was only during my interview at the police station that I found out I had shoved one of the attackers during the scuffle and didn't realize he'd hit his head on the counter on the way down. He passed away 13 hours later due to a brain bleed at just 19 years old. Sometimes I think about his family. Sometimes I have nightmares of seeing him again, but mostly my life goes on as normal. Before my mom OD'd, she had a pimp named Ed. I was 13 and came downstairs to him beating the living crap out of her. We fought and ended up on the porch. I'm short and was shorter than, and he's a heavy-set but older guy. When his back was facing the stairs in the front porch, I gave him a shove and he was pretty much done. He passed away later, but I've no lasting feelings that I know of from it, especially since life was already so traumatic. Until then, I was pretty desensitized. Kicker is that Mom was so upset that she punched me in the throat and sent me to the hospital too. Back in 2008, I was living in my uncle's house. I'd moved there not too many months prior for a job opportunity in a state. My uncle and aunt had gone upstate for vacation, and I was left alone at the house. There had been a lot of snow recently, so work had been canceled, and I was just sitting at home chilling out during the evenings playing computer games. A man had apparently decided to break into the home, and I assumed that he had been casing the place for a couple of days. I woke up in the evening, about 3 days after my aunt and uncle left, to the sound of somebody trying to pry open the back door. My room was a furnished basement, and although it functioned as my bedroom and living room, it also was where my uncle, who was a Marine and a bit of a fan of firearms, kept his firearms cabinet. He had taught me how to use everything in the cabinet, and when I heard what was going on upstairs, I grabbed a shotgun and leveled it at the back door. The way the basement is laid out, the stairs go straight up to that door, straight shot. The man was unsuccessful trying to crowbar the door open, so he broke the glass and reached inside to unlock it. When he opened the door, I turned on the flashlight on the shotgun, which let me see his face. I didn't recognize him, so I pulled the trigger, and he took the shot dead center to the chest. Oof. The phone was also by the back door, so after I walked up and saw him laying on the porch and saw he was dying, I called the police. Listened to him take his last breaths while I was on the line with the dispatcher. When the police got there, they searched his body and found he had a gun on him, and although it's been a long time from what I remember, the man had violent priors. If we're being honest here, I don't know that I'll ever fully heal from the trauma, although I've grown to accept what happened, and although I've accepted the fact that this was somebody who was armed, who was breaking into my home, and I had every right to defend myself, I can still vividly hear the last breaths, and I can still see the look in his eyes as clear as day, if I think about it. He knew he was dying. He bled out right there on the back porch in the snow. Today my life is better, again because I've gone to a lot of therapy about it, and I've had some very wonderful people in my life who helped me kind of reconcile what happened. But it gives me a good understanding of what other people who have also taken life of another say, and that's that you never forget it. I sincerely hope I never have to do that again, because it effed me up for almost a decade before I got over it. I also hope those who are reading this response section who've never had to be in that position never find themselves in it. Not me, but when I was a kid, my friend's dad killed a guy who broke into their house at night. According to my friend, the guy was threatening to shoot his family, but his dad realized the gun was not real, and they got into a fight that ended with his dad pushing the guy down the stairs, resulting in a broken neck. I can say his dad was in a very dark and bad place for a few years after that. He used to be a very smiling and happy person. Then he stopped greeting people in the streets, started to drink heavily, among other stuff. I can't say if it was due to the fact that he killed the guy, or if it was some sort of trauma, like realizing he was actually fighting for his and his family's lives. He's way better now after a couple of years, and lots of therapy, I assume, but he went back to being his old self again. A few years ago, 5 guys broke into my house. I was upstairs gaming and my wife was downstairs. I never heard them kick the door in, just the blood-curdling scream from my wife. I only own one firearm, which is a shotgun that's kept under my bed. After the scream, I opened the office door and heard them screaming at her. I ran to the room and grabbed the shotgun. They heard the running and 2 came running up the stairs. I didn't realize that they had heard me and were coming up the stairs, so after grabbing the gun I was headed downstairs, but as I rounded the bedroom corner, I came face to face with one of the intruders. I don't know if he was armed or not, and at this point, because I didn't expect to encounter them upstairs, my shotgun was not raised. I squeezed the trigger and it shot him in the upper leg area. He fell to the ground and the dude behind him started charging me. Again, unsure if this guy was unarmed, but I raised the gun and shot him in the chest. Hearing the commotion, the other 3 ran. I ran downstairs to check on my wife and never rendered aid to the guy who was shot in the leg, and he bled to death before EMS got there. I have severe PTSD, and even on heavy meds I have trouble sleeping at night. Everyone around me says I've changed, and I'm pretty sure I'm headed toward divorce. Seen psychiatrists and therapists with no success. Guy tried to kill me and some friends randomly with an SUV, mistaken identity. He got my friend with the SUV, and he was in the hospital for a few months but lived. About 2 weeks later, his friends found my apartment, and at 3 a.m. they came up my stairs. I had a Ring camera and wasn't asleep, so I saw the motion detected alert and saw them. The front one had what looked like a gun, but he was in all black and it was pretty dark. When they got to my door, I had a big window next to it. When he smashed it and the window, I pulled the trigger on a 16-gram target load. I don't think he died, to be honest, and they never caught them, but the 2 of them ran down the stairs and ran out of my complex. There was barely any blood on my porch, but there was a lot further down the street toward the exit where it looks like they stopped running. It was about 6 to 8 feet away through a glass window, so I really don't know how deadly a bird shot is. I moved back to my home state shortly after. They caught the first guy who hit my friend with the SUV, and he pled for 12.5 years in the middle of a trial after the state case had rested. I was a prosecutor for years after that, and I've never seen a case plead during trial, so that was very weird. So this happened to me recently, and it sucked. It was a stalker situation that had been going on for years. I tried in vain to get protection, but that system was way more effed than I could have imagined. In some parts, I understood that mental health situations need to be dealt with differently, but it took me over a year to get a protection order from the court. Like, what the... And then, every time he trespassed or harassed me or my family, he would get taken in and released no more than 2 days later, typically bailed out by his rich parents, who bailed him out and likely gave him the money he would use for heroin or meth. Public records showed multiple arrests and court cases tied to illegal drug possession and use. The second time I saw him, he screamed at me, "I'm going to effing kill you." Once I got the protection order, things went quiet for a while. I'm going to try not to overanalyze any of these stories and just take people at their word, but if you receive a gun as a gift, and I'm assuming it was loaded because it was ready to fire, you should probably fire it a few times at a range just to see how you'll react to it. So you had a gun, you never fired it, you killed somebody who was stalking you. Okay, But, you know, gun safety stuff. One day I was at home alone while my partner was away checking on family. I had COVID, so I couldn't join. I just happened to be at my desk, which had a view of the driveway when I saw him, and I immediately called 911. Before I could tell them his name, I heard the heavy wooden door that was dead-bolted shut crash. He was in the house. He was also a big dude, like maybe 250 pounds. I sprinted to the bedroom where I had a handgun, something I had never used before. It was given to me as a gift. I then went to the bedroom door and saw him coming up the stairs. Knowing that my bedroom door didn't lock, it was basically cardboard, I opted to flash the gun at him, commanding him to stop. I should also note that I was on the phone with 911 the entire time. So we stopped for a second, and then resumed coming up the stairs at me screaming. I was paralyzed for a moment. I thought for certain having a gun pointed at someone would be a deterrent, but he was still coming up the stairs. I yelled more for him to leave, but before I knew it, he was 4 feet away and I was out of time, so I pulled the trigger. He took 4 in the chest and staggered down the stairs, limping out of view. Police arrived about 5 minutes later and came into the house. I came downstairs at their order, unarmed, and saw him on the floor unresponsive. He had died from the shots I'd fired. This was the same year I was accepted to and was going to start medical school, but I didn't go. I know it's not my fault. I had to do this, or else I would likely be dead. That's a shitty situation, but what other choice did I have? But I'm still effed up about it. The thought of doing medical school, knowing what I did, is still something I can't get my head around. Furthermore, I also worry about what could happen if I did become a doctor and was working all the time, and what could happen to my family if I wasn't home. What if I have kids one day? I'm trying to work on it, therapy and all that stuff. July 4th sucked. Fireworks mess with me now. It took a long time before I could talk to friends about it. I was amazed at what they would think of me. But everyone I've talked to has been super cool and supportive. My partner and I moved to a new place, obviously, and I have a job that is all right, and we're safe and happy enough. I have a lot to be thankful for, but I'm still messed up. Still paranoid, reserved, and anxious, and trying to reset and get back to normal. I went for a run recently. I used to be a big runner, something I hadn't done in years as I had safety concerns, and that felt good. I'm just trying to take it one day at a time. Last year, a guy tried to break into my home while I was making lunch. I had a rifle in my closet, so I loaded it and shot him when he broke the glass on the door. My anxiety got a lot worse as the result of it, honestly. Got a better door without windows, installed contact sensors on all entry points. I put a motion detector and camera outside. None of it really helps. I still have to get up and check every time I hear something outside. I'm pretty sure nobody got killed during this, but at least one person got some life-altering injuries. I stopped at a drive-up ATM in a rough part of town at 3 a.m. I put in my card, poked the buttons, got $20, and I noticed someone standing in front of my vehicle pointing something at me. I also noticed someone working his way between the side of the truck and the ATM. When I saw him reach for the handle, I crammed the truck into gear and took off. It was a little 4-cylinder with maybe 90 horsepower, so the guy in front was able to get out of the way. But the person on the side got rolled between the side of the truck and the ATM and the bollards next to the ATM. I left a piece of t-shirt on the hooks that were attached to the outside of the bed. It seemed like a poorly thought out method of getting money from someone. They brought a gun to a truck fight. Not me, but a coworker at an old job got attacked when he was out with his girlfriend. Nobody knows if it was an attempted mugging or what, but the attacker came out of nowhere and just started throwing punches. My coworker fought back and punched the attacker. The attacker fell backwards and smacked the back of his head against a brick fixture for a flower bed. The attacker was taken to the hospital but apparently died on the operating room table from the head trauma. My ex-coworker seemed pretty okay with what happened. He's not sure if the attacker wanted his wallet or to attack his girlfriend or what, but it was obviously a self-defense issue, and the cops mostly seemed to think the attacker got what was coming to him anyway. I'm glad my ex-coworker's okay, but That's not an experience I would ever want to have, that's for sure. My situation is sort of weird. I don't know if I killed the person or not. It's a 50-50. I struck his head with an iron bar more than once when I got the chance and ran away. I'm not even in that country now. My life remained the same. Nobody knows except one or two online friends. I just kept wondering if I killed someone or not. It used to eat me up, but now it doesn't anymore, and that bothers me. I didn't necessarily kill them, but they're in a vegetative state now. I was attacked in the town of East St. Louis, Illinois. A sucker punched me and tried to take my truck. We fought to the ground and I got on top and beat him, then put him in a front chokehold till he stopped moving because I knew he had a gun tucked away in his front waistband. I don't feel bad about it because he harmed me first, and I was unarmed while he was. The blood bothered me, but I was in fear for my life and wasn't able to run away. Not me, but a guy I graduated with. We graduated high school in the late 1980s. A couple of years later, he was at a park where a lot of people used to gather to drink and cruise their cars. He got into an altercation with someone, but they were broken up and went their separate ways. The next weekend, they were both back, but the other guy brought his college football playing cousin. The cousin came at the guy I knew, and he put his hand behind his back and said, "I have a gun, don't come any closer." The cousin said, "I have a gun too," and kept coming at him. Dude pulled his gun and killed him. The guy got off on self-defense, but he was never the same. He became an alcoholic and died from health issues because of it a few years ago. I was on a prisoner transport. The inmate had hidden a razor blade on a string tied to a tooth. We missed it on mouth search. I stopped for a bathroom break after 3 hours on the road, and he coughed it up in the stall, and when he came out, he slit my partner's throat. When the bathroom door opened, I saw him, my bleeding partner on the floor, and a gun pointed at me. We both fired, and he hit me high right in the vest. I hit him in the chest twice. I couldn't breathe. I crawled to my partner and held his hand over his neck until help arrived. We lived. He has a hell of a scar and spent 3 weeks in recovery. He lost about 40% of his blood. I never worked again due to a lack of oxygen to the brain. He's mostly fine, but a little slowed down. The inmate was killed instantly, one round in his aorta and another in his left ventricle. I see his face every day. I have no actual regrets, and there was no other option. Still, I see his face and wonder why. It's been 25 years and a few weeks. I never worked in law enforcement or security again. I get to watch my kids grow up, and they'll never know the pain that made the dad they have today. When I was in 7th grade, I jumped and accidentally knocked the attacker out of a 3rd-story window that was open at the time of the assault. He's not dead, but he wishes he was. He was into sports, but he can't play them anymore because they have messed up his spine and legs. He landed standing up. The school tried to expel me for fighting on campus, but I explained that I was attacked from behind and simply rolled them in a way that would get them off of me, and unfortunately, that direction was out the window. His parents tried to sue, but were given footage of the assault. I never bugged the guy a day in my life. I'm pretty sure he was dared to do it after finding out I wasn't into girls. Not me, but a good friend of mine killed somebody during a home invasion, and although he never felt regret, the sight of bloody murder effed with him for a while. His house got robbed 2 years ago while he and his pregnant wife were asleep. The intruders were armed, and as soon as he heard them enter the house, he got up and tried dialing 911. The service was weak, so he knew he had to act fast to protect the unborn baby. A farm boy with a double-barreled shotgun as home defense is not something you'd want to mess with. He shot one of the intruders who made his way to their bedroom. According to him, the guy was holding his intestines from falling out. It was an almost point-blank shot. He's still a little traumatized from that scene. The rest of those intruders hauled ass when they heard a loud bang and were later found and charged. No charges were brought up against my friend.